Hello and welcome. I thought I would do a quick story. I had to run an errand. I dropped that video this morning. I had to run an errand, and then it got me to thinking about a friend of mine that's long been dead. And I just thought I'd have a candid story about a friend of mine. His name was Richard Jensen. And of course he went by the name Dick. Dickadoo. That's what we called him, Dickadoo. He was a tragic character. As a young man, he fell in love with a girl, and he had the misfortune of being 18 while she was 17, literally. And he also had the misfortune of the girl's mother not liking him. And so when he was a very young man, he was arrested and charged with statutory rape and was sent to fucking prison for a while. And of course it was, I mean, they ended up getting married and all kinds of shit. Like, it was the total biggest fucking bullshit ever. I don't think they actually got married, but like it was not like that. As far as we all, it wasn't the truth. That really wasn't the truth of what happened. But he was marked as that, and fucking, that ruins a motherfucker's life, you know. But so anyway, years later, he came back, and he had become a drunk. And he was still a young man. Hell, he's dead now, but he can't be much older than me, you know. Fuck, I'm 40. He probably now would be maybe 45. He's not that much older than me. But when you start drinking fifths of whiskey, 2-3 fifths of whiskey every day, starting at a young age, basically, I mean, fucking, there's nowhere to go except death. But so anyway, so Dick found his way back to the village because he had nowhere. And so he came home, and he was ostracized by his family. He was disowned by his mother. Oops, low power mode. He was disowned by his family. He had one uncle who I've told y'all a story about. Higgins, Higgy Diggy. That's Dick's uncle. And he was the only part of his family that would help him. You know, because fucking Tony was real. So anyway, and Tony was that bad drunk too by the end, but anyway, I actually have another story I need to tell you about Dick and Tony. But we'll save that for the next video, which we actually might make today and drop. This might be a 2-part. But my friend Dick, he was a young man, and he was basically homeless and had nowhere to go, and he was very ill from drinking. He could barely walk. He couldn't function as a human. I told him, you will come live with me. My grandfather, Edmund, was his claim to fame. He lived out in the wilderness, and people who needed to dry up or people who had to work things out, they would come and see my grandfather. And that's why many people in Alaska call him Grandpa or Dad, because he was there for them. And that's why I have many, many brothers and sisters. But he died. Edmund, my granddad's been dead, and so there was no one left to do that. So I figured that was what I needed to do. So I told my friend, I said, you come with me. And we went out in the wilderness. And you can't cut them off from alcohol. People will die. You know, you can't. That's what DTing is. And if you've ever known anything about alcoholism or seen anybody DTing off of booze, then you know. And have you ever seen anybody do it in the middle of nowhere, where there is no one to count on but you? No doctors, no phones, no medicine? Anyway, Dick came to live with me, and when he first started to live with me, he had to drink 2 fifths a day, or he would die. And he could barely carry one stick of firewood. Because I made him work. That's what my granddad did. He'd make you work. You work it out. Whatever your problem is, the pain, the hurt, you work. Dick lived with me for about, I think it was about 4 months. And I had him on a strict regimen of healthy food from the wilderness and clo. And when he left, when he was well, he said, I want to go live my life. He only had a, what do you call this? Half a pint. What do they call that now? There used to be a name for that. You have a pint, you got a half a pint, a little one. I can't remember what they call that now, but we got a name for it. It's kind of like a pony beer bottle. Anyway, he barely could sip on that all day, and he only did that so it would keep his headaches away. He was sober. We made him sober, basically. And he was a good friend. We spent a lot of time together in the wilderness talking about life and talking about the Great Spirit and how people are and why they are that way. Well, Dick had the misfortune of having he decided to leave. And I should have stopped him. I should have told him, you're not ready. But I didn't feel like that was my place. Because I want to help as long as you want my help. He left. And literally, it was literally, I think 2 days later, he found his way to a place that we called the Old House. It's where all the drunks live. It's the party house, flop house, whatever anybody wants to call it. He found his way there. And he sat down on that fucking sofa. And he turned, my friends, I wasn't there, but my friends were there. People I know were there. And he turned up a fifth of whiskey that he had not had access. He hadn't even had access to whiskey like that in that volume. Because I was doling it out to him. I was rationing him food and water and whiskey and fucking clo to goddamn keep him alive and to wean him off of the shit that he needs to get out of his body. And he went to the Old House, the Old Lodge, Old Skins. That has many names. And if you're anywhere around Nenana, Alaska, you know what the fucking Old House is. The Old House. Anyway, he went there and he never left. He turned up a fifth of whiskey and he drank about half of it in one drink. And the shock from that to his system killed him almost immediately. Now, most of the people there that was with him were drunks. So, you know, did he die immediately or did he choke on his own puke? Everybody there was drunk and passed out, but I wasn't there for him. I let him leave and he died. And I blamed myself for that for many, many years. God, I blamed myself for a long time for that. Dick Jensen, he had been ostracized and he had been banished from his family. So when they buried him with no marker. Sometimes, if you go to a native cemetery, you'll see that there are places with no markers. That's on purpose. It's because their family is mad at them. Because those motherfuckers will hold a grudge till even after you're dead. Me and Henry, Jailbird, my brother, and Tony Jensen, his uncle, I told Tony, because Tony was the only part of his family who really had anything to do with him, and I told him about 2 weeks after we buried Dick, I said, Tone, I'm making a marker for Dick, because he is my friend. And he said, that's against tradition, Will. It's not your place. His mother said we will not mark it. And I said, fuck her, man. It's my brother. And so we carved out of a big piece of wood. I made it a diamond. Big diamond. Richard Jensen. I haven't thought about that in a lot of years, but that's fucking shit that happens in the village, man. You can't understand. Some people, I think, might. Anyway, stay tuned. I'm going to tell y'all another story about when I took Tony and... I want to tell you a story later about when I took Tony and Dick out hunting. Their last moose hunt. It was their last moose hunt. Now, when it happened, I didn't know it was their last moose hunt. But, I know now. But anyway, stay tuned for that. This has been an emotional story time. I'm having a really bad week, you guys. I'm having a really bad week. My kids have been taken away. And I'm alone and I'm lonely. And I know there's a lot of great people in the community, and I consider you all very good friends. But I'm definitely alone and lonely here. And, when I lived alone in the wilderness, even after my grandfather died, I never was lonely or sad. So why is it that a person can be alone and lonely, but sad, or a person can be alone and lonely and not sad? I don't know. Anyway, anabasi stop. Stop!